Okay, can everyone hear me? Welcome back, everyone. This is the beginning of the more detailed presentations about particular projects in Western Australia. My name is Joe Dortch. I'm an archaeologist. I've been a practitioner in WA for my whole career. It's a great privilege and honour to be here on Whadjuk land, acknowledge the traditional owners on whose land we meet, and also acknowledge the traditional owners of all the countries that we're talking about today. So I'd like to note that we have find ourselves at a turning point, as the others have said this morning. We've gone through 30 years of changes in my brief time, and we've seen a change in attitude. We've seen changes in technology, ways of communicating have vastly changed, and with that comes changes in expectations. And now we're finally seeing new laws. So it's a great time to be talking about the positive sides, where we can go in heritage, and I hope the show projects we talk about today that my colleagues here will be presenting will showcase some of the positives and some of the best ways of celebrating heritage, recording heritage in new ways. So I'd just like to note that we have everybody here, I think. Some of the presenters will come later. We have representatives of the Murujuga Aboriginal Corporation and their collaborators from UWA. We have Yindjibarndi Aboriginal Corporation, elders and members of that corporation. We have Wadjuri people from the Midwest coming and their collaborators. And lastly, we have myself talking on a collaboration with the Inawonga people. So we have talks from around the state. So with that, I'd just like to note for the format with our speakers, we have basically 4 15-minute talks, and then we'll have 20 minutes, I hope, for a discussion from the floor with all the speakers up here. Some of the speakers will be down in chairs down there. I'll be back here. So we'll try and be visible and up here for you to talk to. But first we'll go through our 15-minute talks, and each one of those is 15 minutes, and then we'll go straight to the next one. There's a timekeeping Nazi down here, and she will flag us with a 5-minute and a 1-minute and a 0-minute warning. At 0 minutes, I will very diplomatically approach you and ask you to give way to the next speaker. All right, so I think we might be ready for our first presenter, which is Vince Adams and also Joe McDonald. Vince Adams from the Murujuga Aboriginal Corporation, chairperson, and Joe McDonald, chair of the Rock Art Centre at UWA. So I'll just hand over to Vince now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, my name is Vince Adams. I'm an Yindjibarndi man from the Murujuga Aboriginal Corporation, also the new elected chairperson of that corporation and chairperson of the World Heritage listing for Murujuga. So today, what we're going to do is first of all acknowledge welcome to country and the custodians of the area. Really appreciate the welcome to country. Thanks for that, Mr. Collard. Also, moving on, we have an apology for our CEO, who's supposed to be giving a presentation as well with us today. His name's Peter Jeffries. He won't be here today to do that, so apologies from him. So with no further ado, what I'll get you guys to see first is a video of country.
It's coming.
It's coming. It'll be here.
Says it's coming.
30 seconds or something, isn't it?
Yeah. Doesn't look like it's coming.
No?
There we go. Hear that? Oh, just give us this for a second.
Cheers, thank you for that. Just a reminder of the magic of Murujuga, basically giving us an understanding of a magnificent place without the other added stuff to it. So one of the significant things of the Burrup is, as we all know and well known for, is its rock art, and how we've been lucky to create something familiar for all of mankind, if you like to say, that walks around that area. But again, location. The Burrup is near the Dampier Peninsula, in the Pilbara. It has, significant cultural, historical, archaeological, geological history behind it all. So it's and like I said, it's been famous for its rock art. So if you see in the areas of the Burrup, Murujuga we call it, hip bone sticking out, the archaeologically on Murujuga itself shows the importance of Murujuga has always been with our people, and not only our people, but now the future for Murujuga going forward. A lot of the Murujuga is a national park now, so working together with GEWA to establish a partnership so that we have full control over what we protect, how we protect, when we protect. So that's basically Murujuga wanting to do. Who is Murujuga? Murujuga is made up of 5 language groups. I'm one of those language groups from the Injibandi tribe. Our connection to the Burrup is not the actual custodian of it. Our connection to the Burrup is more cultural, spiritual as well. But most importantly, it's about the people, how us people are connected to that place. So by putting that all together, in 2006, a BIMIA agreement was signed, so that those 5 language groups get together to protect the country as best we possibly can. But most importantly, to have people live, work, play, and holiday, I suppose, in that area. So, yep. Sorry, I'm a bit wary on time. So what do we do? How do we do this? How do we get most of our community, most of our people involved in the process of looking after country? There are many ways. The national park, again, looking after national parks, we need rangers. Those rangers are out there to not only protect country and people on country, but also the significance of our heritage, our culture, and our connection to the place. Also giving opportunities to become active leaders and managers within our corporation, within the company as well. So not only having elders, but also having young leaders within the corporation to develop things like our heritage works that's happening out there at the moment. Again, just touching on a few of the things that we are going to be letting you guys know. I'm just wary on time. So again, like I said, with the Ranger program, the huge potential for that when we're looking at heritage, when we're looking at how we protect country, how we protect people on country. So, developing a cultural management plan that supports not only the country, but the people that are visiting that country. So that's a huge plus for us. In the past, we haven't had that sort of stuff. But the most important thing about how do we get our people to actually look after country? One of the good examples, one of the good expressions that I've had from an elder was, leading on from this morning discussion about how anthropologists and archaeologists and others should speak our language before they talk for our country. Look, good example again, like I said, by understanding Murujuga, by understanding my culture, how is it that we get others to be in that position? I'm not from country, so I had to learn the protection and the safety of that area. How do we teach others? We educate. One of the areas of education is tourism. So a huge big tourism precinct is going ahead on the Burrup so that we educate the rest of our community. And for that matter, rest of the world, because we're going higher as well. Murujuga Rock Art Strategy Program, there's one actively in process as we speak, moving forward under huge duress between government and a historical significant move forward with the underwater discovery of artifacts and places like that. So it's a massive work going forward. The only way we can do this again is within partnerships with you know, like we say, we still struggle with mining and others, but government is the key forward. They ain't going nowhere, and neither are we. So, in other words, we look at the World Heritage listing. So, like I said, we're not just going mini schools, so that protecting a little bit here and there. It's also now in the World Heritage listing places like what was it? UNICEF. YMOS, yes. So guys like organizations like that are doing extremely well in regards to getting information that is correct information. Having 5 language groups out there can sometimes have a lot of conflict, hence where Murujuga comes into play with the corporation. Handling that sort of process is somewhat difficult, but is manageable. So with all that, I might just hand that over now to my other colleague. Sorry for taking all your time. Okay, that's all right. But yeah, so take that to Jo. Jo's our lady who's going to be doing the next part of the presentation.
Thanks, Vince. So I'm just very quickly going to talk about some work that we've been doing with MAC and with Rio Tinto over the last 5 years. We've just finished a large linkage project funded by the ARC. And the goal of this was to actually increase the values that we could know about this place in terms of scientific values, but also the community values. So it's going to be very quick, going to be a rush through the exciting things that have happened in the last 5 years. So this has been a really good project where we've actually got community out on country, and we've worked in some landscapes that people haven't worked in for a very long time, and many of the people have not been back to for a very long time. One of the findings is that we now have evidence that people were living in Murujuga during the last ice age. We had a suspicion of this from work that was done by Michel Leblanche in the 70s. He found that syrinx shell you can see on the bottom right there was dated to 22,000, and no one believed him. They all thought that something must be wrong with the date. Well, we've now excavated a rock shelter there as well, which has a date of the same age. So we have evidence that people were living in this, and it was probably a refuge during the last ice age. We've also found that a lot of the occupation across the archipelago is actually out on these outer islands now. But when people were living there, they weren't islands. They were still part of the coast as it was coming in after the last ice age. So the shoreline came in very quickly at the end of that time period. And so we've excavated these sites out there, and we can now see that there's this very early pulse of occupation there from about 15,000 years ago, and then it really heats up in the early Holocene, and people are doing a whole range of things out there, including processing plants on stone tools, eating huge amounts of terebralia, and doing a whole range of different things, which we now have information about that we didn't have before. As Vince mentioned, we've also found in the last year some submerged relics at Cape Rougier. So these are artifacts below the low tide mark, and we've now found a site basically that is below low tide. And as this indicates, as does the archaeological record on land, people were living across this entire landscape as the sea level came in at that time. We also have evidence in the intertidal zone that this is exactly where we can still look for evidence that is probably older than 7,000 years, because that's when the sea level got to where it is now. And we have these entire different types of living sites in this intertidal area where we hadn't necessarily been looking before for archaeological evidence. We also know that people are building stone structures at enormous quantities across the archipelago, and this is work that's being done by Emma Beckett at the moment. But standing stones along this east ridgeline at Rosemary Island, house structures. I think we found about 25 almost villages on the west coast now of Rosemary that again have got these terebralia middens around them. People are living quite close together in these semi-sedentary locations around permanent water out on what is now Rosemary Island, but before it was that. And then we also find that those islands continued to be used. So we weren't sure if people actually abandoned those landscapes after the sea level rose or whether they kept using them. Certainly we have evidence that they were using them at contact because Philip Parker King in 1800 actually noticed people on boats. So obviously people were getting out there on these mangrove rafts. But this site in the middle of Enderby Island is an extraordinary site We found a whole range of things which we didn't know that people were doing, including this this tusk shell bead necklace manufacturing. It was over 1,000 beads in this one very, very small test excavation right in the middle of the island. And we've also found on Enderby Island that there are these fish traps. Now, we actually knew from Pat Vinicum's work around the island back in the 80s that this fish trap was there, but we went back this year when we were doing the Deep History of Sea Country project, and this is a photogrammetric image of that fish trap taken by someone who was snorkeling. So as you can see, it's an amazing construction, and as a result of all the fieldwork we've done, we've now found about 15 fish traps around the archipelago. And this is really interesting because we have some really good ethnographic and ethno-historic collections of what people were doing around the archipelago in terms of catching fish. Lots of collections, and Al Patterson's work with the Collecting the West project has actually identified that there's an enormous amount of material that was actually collected from the northwest coast and is now in museums in Europe. And this includes a 30-metre long spinifex net, which we think is probably what these people here are doing. This is up in Broome, but actually using a spinifex net to actually catch fish. And again, I must have taken out the picture. We've actually got, I've taken out the wrong slide. Anyhow, we've actually found some tiny operculums, little fish ear bones from the middle of Enderby Island again, about 150 of them, which suggests people are using nets and catching very large amount of very small fish and actually taking them to the middle of the island. So again, lots of different fishing things we can find out about. Philip Parker King, we think we found a picture of his boat that someone's engraved there. We've also found evidence of whalers, Northwest American whalers actually landing there and inscribing things about their visit. Also excavated the shipyards on West Lewis Island and found that a lot of the rock art is actually probably post-dating the construction of that. And one of the really important things we've been doing with Mac and Rio Tinto is actually during our field schools have been recording the lands which are not in the conservation estate. So these are lands which are in the Bimia lands, which could potentially be affected by industry if there's an intention to continue that. And what we've done here is rank the panels that we've recorded here with national heritage values. So the green boundary shows the boundary of the national park, the yellow is the Bimia lands. Those blue areas, for instance, are each a panel which has got 2 or more national heritage values. So this is land on the Burrup, which should be, in fact, probably national heritage listed also. Well, it is national heritage listed, but it's actually not in conservation estate. And that's it from us. Thank you.